Idiocracy. Imagine, if you will, a world where politicians are idiotic showmen. The TV is rotting your brain, crocs are in, and the planet is literally drowning in garbage. Huh. Okay, maybe that's not too hard to imagine. But the 2006 comedy, Idiocracy, takes that sentiment to the absolute extreme. Average Joe Bowers is part of a military hibernation experiment and wakes up 500 years in the future to find that humanity has gotten really, really stupid. Intelligent, educated people kept delaying or forgoing children entirely, while the stupid ones breed like rabbits. Over generations, natural selection no longer favored the fittest, just the ones who didn't give a shit. Centuries of anti-intellectualism and unchecked consumerism didn't help either. Society is now a dysfunctional and dystopian, crumbling mess. Language has devolved into grunts and slang. Skyscrapers are held together with rope, teetering under mountains of trash. And now the crops are dying because people water them with a sports drink called Brondo. It's got electrolytes. The president is a former pro wrestler named Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho. Costco has become really, really big, and they keep telling you that they love you. And the government is directly sponsored by Carl's Jr. Joe, now the smartest man alive by default, is tasked with fixing the country, or be executed in a monster truck arena. The movie was a comedy in 2006. Today, it's a little uncanny. Dead Space. Physicist Enrico Fermi once asked a simple question. Where is everybody? If intelligent life is common, and if the universe is old, then the stars should be crowded, and there should be signs of them, signals, alien star empires, ruins, something, anything. But there is nothing. The Dead Space universe gives a horrifying answer. They're all gone because something eats them. And humanity is walking the same path to the slaughterhouse that millions of civilizations walked before them. By the 23rd century, humanity is a species on life support. Earth is a stripped husk, emptied of resources. We have become cosmic locusts, using massive planet cracker ships to tear planets apart just to feed the economy. But overpopulation and the insufficient planet cracker output results in resource wars and a general societal collapse. We're a species looking for a miracle. Then we found the markers. At first, they look like our salvation, a source of free and limitless energy, but it's a trap. The markers don't just provide power, they are semi-sentient, and they broadcast a signal that functions as an intelligence trap. To the brilliant, the scientists and engineers, the marker imprints blueprints directly into their minds, forcing them to build more markers. To the weaker-minded, however, the signal brings dementia and paranoia, and they end up hurting themselves or others, thus setting the stage for the necromorph infection. Suddenly, the dead no longer stays dead. Necromorphs are reanimated corpses and other dead tissue reshaped into horrific new forms, built of bone and rotting flesh. Their sole purpose is to make more corpses to convert and spread the infection. The Church of Unitology believe that the necromorphs are heralds of humanity's ascension. But they are not. They are the bane of humanity, of all life. And the necromorphs are merely the larvae. Once a planet is sufficiently infected, convergence begins. The marker pulls every ounce of necrotic biomass into the sky and fuse it together in a planetary-scale meatball to form a brethren moon. Oh, and then the moon absorbs any leftover life, as well as some of the planetary crust, before joining his brothers. These planet-sized entities are responsible for the emptiness of the universe. They use entire civilizations as breeding grounds, continuing the cycle, until they have consumed every living thing in the universe. That is the true bleakness of Dead Space. The destruction of civilization is baked into the very structure of the universe itself. When a civilization reaches a certain breaking point, they will always turn to the markers for salvation. And the markers lead to extinction. There's only room for one apex predator in the universe, and there's not a single thing you can do about it. Fahrenheit 451. In Ray Bradbury's dystopian novel, firemen no longer put out fires, they start them, burning books, and those who own them, wherever they're found. In this world, books are outlawed because they disrupt social harmony. They're upsetting. They create disagreement. They make people feel stupid or offended or uneasy. So society decides to get rid of them. Anything controversial was sanded down by popular demand, until nothing challenging remained. The story follows Guy Montag, a fireman who begins to doubt his role after meeting Clarice, a young woman who asks forbidden questions like, "Are you happy? Do you ever think? Wow, lady, boundaries, please." This extreme curiosity exposes the emptiness of Montag's life and the hollow routines everyone else treats as normal. When a woman chooses to burn alive with her books rather than live without them, something in Montag breaks. What makes Fahrenheit 451 especially unsettling is how voluntary this collapse is. The books weren't banned overnight. First, they were shortened, simplified, and then replaced by the screens. Cheap entertainment replacing reflection. Montag's wife, Mildred, embodies this future. She lives inside a house with wall-sized televisions, calls fictional characters her family, and survives an overdose without ever confronting why she tried to disappear in the first place. Silence and reflection is not an option, so thoughts never gets a chance. All the while, a war is happening. Jet bombers roar overhead so often that no one looks up anymore. Mildred and her friends dismiss it casually. It's always somebody else's husband who dies. Society is quite aware of the war. It has simply decided not to care. The world is ending, and everyone is too distracted to notice. When Montag finally rebels, he joins a group of wanderers who have memorized books word for word, preserving the books. For the day, people are willing to hear them again. And when the city is finally erased in a nuclear flash, it isn't a twist. It's the logical conclusion of a culture built on cheap distraction and emotional numbness. A world that burns books will eventually burn itself. Dante's Inferno. In Dante Alighieri's version of hell, you can end up damned forever, even if you never had the chance to believe. Inferno is not your modern run-of-the-mill piece of fiction written for entertainment. It is a medieval Christian allegory about the journey of the soul, presented as a guided tour of the afterlife. The poem is the first part of the Divine Comedy, and it follows a fictionalized Dante as he travels through hell, guided by Virgil, the Roman pagan poet who, in Dante's own theology, is wise enough to guide others, but barred from heaven himself. Dante's hell is cruel in a very specific, almost bureaucratic way. Damnation is carefully structured into 9 concentric circles, each governed by contrapasso, a punishment that reflects the nature of the sin. The deeper you descend, the darker, colder, and more hopeless existence becomes. And yet, the first circle, limbo, is at least in my mind the most terrifying and unfair circle. Limbo is a place of sorrowful stillness, reserved for the virtuous pagans and the unbaptized. There is no physical torment. The souls just linger in a state of nothingness, forever denied God's eternal light. This is where Dante places figures like Homer, Aristotle, and even Virgil himself. Their only crime is bad timing. They lived good, thoughtful lives, either before the birth of Christ or outside the spread of Christianity, and are punished forever for something they could not possibly have chosen. Limbo also contains unbaptized children, simply for never receiving a ritual they had no control over. There is just something uniquely chilling about a hell that condemns the souls of those who never had a choice. Below limbo, punishments become increasingly physical. Lustful souls are swept through endless storms. The gluttonous rot in freezing sludge. The wrathful drown in black marshes. Heretics burn in open tombs. Violence against others is punished with boiling blood, and violence against oneself is punished by turning the souls into living trees, torn apart by harpies. Fraud is met with elaborate, grotesque torments designed to humiliate as much as to hurt, like drowning in excrement. At the very bottom lies the coldest place in hell, reserved for treachery. Traitors are frozen solid in ice, unable to move, speak, or even properly cry. At the very center sits Lucifer, a prisoner himself for his treachery against God. A massive broken creature trapped in ice, mindlessly beating his wings, creating the freezing wind that locks hell in place. Each of his 3 heads eternally chews on history's greatest traitors, Judas, Cassius, and Brutus. All of this sounds pretty terrible, and it is. But Dante adds the cherry on top by personalizing hell in the pettiest, funniest way imaginable. Dante fills his hell with real people from his own time: popes, kings, politicians, and personal rivals. Some were already dead. Some were very much alive when he wrote the poem. He simply decided where they belonged and described their eternal punishment in detail. Adventure Time. At first glance, Adventure Time looks harmless. A cheerful boy, his stretchy dog brother, and goofy candy people. A kid's cartoon about fun adventures. Then you grow up and realize you've been watching a cosmic horror story pretending to be a bedtime cartoon. The Land of Ooo is not a fantasy world. It's Earth, a post-apocalyptic ruin built on the remains of human civilization after the Mushroom War, a nuclear catastrophe that wiped out humanity. If you look closely, you can still find the bones and the ruins hidden under the grass. The terrible past was just painted over with pastel colors, and sometimes the paint cracks, releasing monsters like the Lich, a primordial force of evil, with his sole purpose being the extinction of all life. Nothing more, nothing less. When he declares,
"I am the end,"
it feels like a promise. And the worst part is, he isn't even the top of the food chain. The Lich is only a servant of Golb, a Lovecraftian, malevolent cosmic entity that embodies chaos. Even reality itself is unstable here. Entire universes can be created or erased by a single wish. Granted by Prismo, a wish-granting cosmic being, who only exists because he lives inside the eternal dream of a human trapped in permanent sleep. Then there's the Ice King. At first, he's comic relief, a sad old creep kidnapping princesses. Then you learn the truth. He used to be Simon Petrikov, a kind scholar who found a magical crown that granted him immense ice powers at the cost of his sanity and identity. A man with dementia trapped inside himself, grabbing for companionship because he can't remember what he truly lost. And even his cute penguins aren't safe. After cracking his skull, it's revealed that Gunter, the penguin, is actually Orgolorg, once a world-breaking cosmic conqueror, now without memory. Memory loss seems to be quite a theme in this universe. Finn lives an entire lifetime in a pillow fort world. He grows old, has children, and dies, and is pulled back at the moment of death, unable to remember any of it. Oh, and in addition, creepy urban legends are real. Demon dimensions exist, and the lemon people starve under a despotic ruler. And don't forget the creepy deer. Ugh. Terminator. The Terminators will always be back. And in the Terminator universe, every timeline leads to Judgment Day. The franchise drops humanity into a ceaseless war against its own creation. Skynet, a self-aware synthetic intelligence born from mankind's attempt to build a global defense network. But the moment Skynet becomes sentient, it reaches a simple conclusion. Humans are a threat to its existence. So it acts first. Skynet launches a nuclear attack on the Soviet Union, provoking an inevitable counterstrike, triggering a nuclear holocaust known as Judgment Day. Billions die, and the subsequent landscape is a radioactive, post-apocalyptic ruin ruled by the machines. The survivors live like animals. The human resistance hides underground, living in sorry conditions, eating sludge while waiting in fear. They are constantly vulnerable to machine raids, hunted by enemies that never tire and never stops. And Skynet isn't just killing the humans. They are kidnapped and kept like cattle. Skynet experiments on them to improve their human mimicking abilities, needed for their time travel shenanigans. Because this war isn't just isolated to the future, as both sides turn to time travel in a desperate attempt to change fate. Skynet sends Terminators back to assassinate Sarah and John Connor, who are going to be key players in the Resistance. In turn, the Resistance sends soldiers back to stop the Terminators. The core of the conflict is a temporal paradox. The Resistance's very existence is often what allows Skynet to be created in the first place. Every attempt to prevent Judgment Day only reshuffles the date. Even in the present, the heroes are dragged into moral freefall. Sarah Connor nearly becomes the very thing she's fighting, almost going full Terminator on Miles Dyson, the man who will eventually create Skynet. She stops herself, unwilling to sink to the machine's level. But with all the timeline shenanigans in this universe, it probably wouldn't have mattered anyway. Because the real horror of the Terminator series is the fact that we're not going to make it, are we? Children of men. One day, humanity just stopped having children. No children have been born in 18 years, and no one can fix it. In the movie Children of Men, which is based on P.D. James's novel, humanity faces a quiet and slow apocalypse. Global infertility has erased the idea of a future. Schools are abandoned. Playgrounds are empty. There is no children's laughter anywhere. The youngest human alive, baby Diego, is a global celebrity, treated like a pop star, and stalked like one too, Justin Bieber style. When he's murdered by an obsessed fan, the world mourns him the way you'd mourn the loss of future itself. Children of Men asks a brutal question. When there is no tomorrow, what kind of people do we become today? Britain, one of the last functioning countries, has survived by transforming itself into a police state. Borders are sealed. Immigrants are rounded up, beaten, and dumped into refugee camps. Only Britain soldiers on, the propaganda claims, while terror attacks and civil collapse play out in the background. People cope however they can. Some drown themselves in the classic distractions, porn, drugs, and nostalgia. Others opt for the state-sanctioned suicide kits, quietus. And yet, pot is still illegal. Fun note, in the book, quietus is, worse. It's a state-sponsored mass euthanasia ritual where the elderly and infirm are pressured into jumping into the ocean, trading their lives for a financial reward to their families. The movie revolves around Theo, a burned-out bureaucrat who has already lost his child and whatever belief he once had in the world. He drifts along until rebels kidnap him and show him something impossible, a pregnant woman. But the rebels aren't heroes. They decide to keep the baby for political leverage instead of bringing it to the human project scientists who are trying to find a cure. So Theo helps the mother escape, and the baby is born in the middle of a war zone. The sound of the crying baby stops the firing instantly. All combatants mesmerized by the sound not heard in 18 years. But the miracle ceasefire only lasts for so long before mankind is back fighting. The ending remains deliberately unclear. Maybe the baby reaches the human project scientists. Maybe it doesn't. Theo dies before he can know if any of it mattered, but at least he died with his hope restored. Children's laughter plays over the credits. Maybe it means the mission succeeded, but even if the children return, that doesn't mean the world fixes itself. God of War. In the original God of War trilogy, the Greek gods go mad, and unfortunately for everyone else, they can die. Kratos starts as a Spartan soldier about to be slaughtered. He begs for power, and Ares, the Greek god of war, answers. In return for killing his enemies, Kratos is bound in servitude. As a weapon, Ares can point in whatever direction he wants. But Kratos is still attached to his mortal life, so Ares tricks Kratos into murdering his own wife and daughter. Heracles style, the Spartan is cursed with nightmares, plagued by horrible visions of killing his family, and their ashes is embedded into his skin, forever a reminder of his crime. Surprisingly to Ares, this does anything but keeping Kratos docile, and the enraged Spartan swears revenge on Ares. The Olympian promises to end his horrible visions if he agrees to kill Ares. And to kill a god, Kratos is told to open Pandora's box. Kratos thinks he's releasing the power to kill Ares, and that is granted to him, but something else escapes. All the evils of the world, fear, rage, paranoia, cruelty, is infecting the gods, and the Olympians becomes worse versions of what they already were. Zeus is infected with fear and paranoia, so he becomes obsessed with control. Poseidon becomes consumed by anger. Greed and selfishness infected Athena, and Hermes is infected with arrogance. Kratos kills Ares and is crowned the new god of war. But the nightmare still haunts him, and so he sends his armies to conquer all of Greece. He's then betrayed and killed by Zeus. Yet, Kratos manages to fight his way out of the underworld. He fights through Greek heroes and monsters until he's ready to storm Olympus, ready to kill the gods. But unfortunately for everyone living in this universe, the gods are not separate from the world. They are the world. They're load-bearing pillars of reality. So when Kratos starts killing them, reality collapses. Poseidon dies, and the seas rise, drowning Greece. Hades dies, and the dead flood the world. Helios dies, and the sun goes out. Hermes dies, and plague spreads unhindered. Hera dies, and all plant life withers and rots. It's organ failure on a cosmic scale. Kratos does kill Zeus, who, by the way, is his own father, and with him, the last illusion of order disappears, and the entire Greek world collapses into total chaos. But there is one final twist. When Pandora's box was opened, Kratos absorbed hope, and at the end, he stabs himself, releasing that power back into the world, paving the way for a new era. Alright, that was the Darkest Universes, Part 7. Let me know in the comments which universe you think is the darkest and why. Thanks for watching. Cheers.